I just got back from seeing Doctor Strange. I've put a poster up in its honour. Yay! Okay, so there's already been some controversy about this movie, like, even before it came out. As soon as Tilda Swinton got cast as the Ancient One, the internet kind of exploded. I don't really want to get into all the politics that much. I found it difficult to come down on like one side or the other. I think it's been discussed by people a lot smarter than I am, so I'm not gonna sort of delve into it, but the research that I've done, Marvel's kind of between a rock and a hard place with the casting in this movie. I don't condone the whitewashing at all, but I can see why Marvel's done it. I can see the reasoning behind why Marvel made the decision. And it's not the best reason, because it's all about money, and they're desperately scrambling to not lose any of the Chinese box office, which is like a huge source of revenue for Marvel at the moment. It's one of their biggest box office regions. And so it's not the best reason to, whitewash roles, but they're kind of in a sort of political situation here that is kind of messy. I think that Scott Derrickson, who is the director of Doctor Strange, he's also done movies like Sinister before, he came out and said that he wanted to do something similar to Iron Man 3, which is the same thing that they did with the Mandarin. Which is trying and erase the sort of negative stereotypes of the 50s and 60s comic books, which I think is a little bit of a better explanation as to the whitewashing of the role. But because of Marvel's sort of sticky situation with this movie and obviously the backlash that they've received, I'm kind of not fully decided on where I fall in seeing this movie. So I went to see it and I decided to see it and see how it represented everything. So Doctor Strange follows the story of Stephen Strange. He's a brilliant neurosurgeon. At the beginning of the movie, he's smart, he's arrogant, he's rich, he's fantastic at his job. He's got everything going for him. But he suffers a brutal car accident at the beginning of the movie, which renders him unable to use his hands for surgery and such, because they have shakes. And it's like irreparable nerve damage. So he tries lots of different methods to try and fix them, and he can't. So he goes on a spiritual journey to Tibet, and he meets someone called the Ancient One there, who begins to teach him the ways of magic. Seemingly to begin with to heal his hands, but eventually he gets into like a world-saving event against the big bad of this movie, who's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who you'll know from Hannibal. So when you're watching this movie, it's very much a Marvel movie. Like, underneath all of the psychedelic 1960s imagery, it's still very much, and maybe one of the most generic superhero movies that Marvel's given us. The plotline in particular, it's a man at the peak of his career, the peak of his life, who suffers an experience which causes him to fall, and he slowly has to build his way back up. I mean, it's the story of Iron Man 1, it's the story of Batman, it's there's been superhero stories being told like this for generations. But it's interesting because sort of rising above all of that, you have actually one of Marvel's most experimental movies. I feel like Marvel has enough revenue, they have enough money, they have enough fans, that now they can kind of get away with doing movies that people, that they wouldn't have thought of doing, years ago, that wouldn't have even been conceived. And I feel like this movie is almost the opposite to what Guardians did. Guardians was the first kind of experimental Marvel movie, and that presented us with a cast of characters that we wouldn't have expected, but then followed a form that we've seen in things like Star Wars. So it was an adventure, space drama, and it was humorous, and then it was the characters that then built on that. With Doctor Strange, you have a really recognisable superhero here. You have a white American male. I know Benedict Cumberbatch is English, before you get on my back about that. But he's one of the biggest stars in the world at the moment, especially with Sherlock coming back out again. And so you have a recognizable hero. But the form of this movie is completely different to any of the Marvel movies that we've seen before. It's a lot more experimental, it's a lot more trippy. The visuals are fantastic, but they're a little bit sort of Inception-esque, with buildings moving and dimensions collapsing. And it's not something that we've really delved into before. So it's nice to see Marvel being able to experiment with different kinds of movies. They've got the opportunity to do it now. There are people who are gonna be seeing this movie no matter what, even if they've never heard of Doctor Strange before. It's got a Marvel name on it, so they're gonna go see it. I think the best proof I have with this is my cinema screening was quite small, but in the row in front of me, there was a group of people who I think they were as big a Marvel fan as I am. And this is the first movie where you see the new Marvel animated logo, that was released at San Diego Comic-Con, with the MCU movie clips in there. And that got applause from the row in front of me. People were clapping. So that is an audience that's gonna be there. They're gonna be filling the cinema every single time. So Marvel is able to bring out these kind of movies and sort of experiment a little bit with what they can get away with. So I wasn't really sold on this movie from the trailers. I saw all of the trailers before I came to see the movie. And being someone who hasn't read the original Doctor Strange comic books, I've only encountered Doctor Strange in the Avengers comic books when he's crossed their path. It wasn't the movie I was really excited to see, particularly because the casting disappointed me straight from the outset. I was actually somebody who didn't see Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. From the vibe I got in the comic books, I didn't really see Benedict Cumberbatch as the right choice. In my head, I kind of thought of Aidan Gillen. He plays Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. He was in my head. That's who I'd have thought would have been a really good Doctor Strange. And I was worried that the casting of Benedict Cumberbatch was a bit of a popularity cast. He's very popular at the moment. He has kind of the right look, and I thought, for the first time, Marvel had just done a popularity cast, and we were expected to go see it because of that. So I went into this movie kind of tepidly anticipatory. I wasn't super excited to see this movie. But I came out pleasantly surprised. I came out very happy with this film. I think it's a good, solid movie. I think it's entertaining, it's funny, it's more intellectually engaging than the other Marvel movies that we've seen before. And I thought it was an enjoyable movie. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Benedict Cumberbatch might have been the best bit of this film. I'm going to eat my words because I was so worried about him beforehand, and now I have to come out and say that he actually really sold this film and he sold the character. Doctor Strange is the kind of character that there's no real reasons why you should like him. He's a lot like Tony Stark. He's very arrogant, he doesn't care about other people, he doesn't play nice with others, and there are a lot of things that you really shouldn't like about Stephen. But the thing that Marvel does really well, and have done from the start, is they've taken flawed characters, they've given fantastic actors to them, and they've written the script in such a way that you really feel for these guys. I felt for Doctor Strange at the beginning of this movie. As soon as he lost the use of his hands, straight away I was devastated for this character, because his whole life, the rug had just been pulled out from under him. And Benedict really sold that. I was very worried about his casting in particular because he's been typecast a lot as Sherlock characters, right? When I saw the trailers for this movie, I think the promos haven't done him any justice. They present him very much as Sherlock the Magnificent, in the same way that we got Sherlock in space in Into Darkness. So I was kind of worried that that's what we were going to get stuck with, just this American Sherlock. But he manages to stray away from that just enough to make Stephen a completely different character, enough to make him, you know, differently likable. And I think that he really gives Steven an identity in the Marvel Universe. I think he's going to do well with the rest of the characters. Something in particular I really liked, it was the one thing that did intrigue me about seeing his character in the movie, is he's a doctor, right? So he stresses this in the movie. He's not Mr. Strange, he's not Master Strange, like, he's a doctor, right? And that's something that really intrigued me straight off the bat, because I really like Doctor characters. So, you know, Star Trek, the Doctor character on the ship is always my favourite. And the reason why I like them so much is because with a Doctor, you have someone that, you know, is built to heal people, and they're built to save lives, and, you know, they've sworn the Hippocratic Oath. And then you pair that with the need to be a hero, and, you know, we've seen in Marvel before, and, you know, it's definitely been explored in the Marvel Universe, that sometimes you have to sacrifice things in order to save the larger cause. You know, people sometimes have to die in order to save more lives. If we're looking at DC, we all learned that particular lesson really well with Man of Steel, right? So I was really looking forward to seeing the sort of dichotomy between, you know, who Doctor Strange is and who he's going to have to be. And you get that a little bit in the movie. Not quite as much as I'd hoped there would be. I thought there would have been a little bit more debate and a little bit more discussion in that. And to be fair, I feel like there are some moments in the movie where character development has been lost. I mean, not just in that particular debate of, you know, his life as a doctor against his life as a hero, but I feel like other bits of his character development in the movie was sort of rushed along a little bit. I feel like the movie makers really had to rush to get to the plot line. Like, Scott Derrickson knows that Doctor Strange isn't a character that everyone's dying to see, so he has to get to the plot really, really fast. And I think that, you know, in some ways that sort of cut out some of the character development. I'd have liked to have seen more of a reaction to when he loses the use of his hands. You see it a little bit in the movie, and, you know, there is sort of a 5-minute discussion on that, but not as much as I think it warranted. And I also thought when he was in the mountains learning how to use magic, he picks it up really fast. Like, I mean, like, within the space of a month. And, you know, I'm thinking back to when Star Wars The Force Awakens came out, and everyone was, like, yelling about Rey picking up, you know, the Force and, you know, using a lightsaber really fast. And I was thinking in Doctor Strange, like, this guy figures out how to use magic to the point of being, like, a master within a month. And I'm like, really? Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating with a month, maybe it was a few months, but I think we should have got a little bit more time between when Strange goes to the mountains and when he has sort of mastered the magic. But when I look back across the movie, they've been very economical with the film, with the timing. None of the fight scenes are overdrawn. You know, this isn't the Magnificent Seven where we have, you know, 40 minutes of fighting followed by 20 minutes of gunslinging. You know, the fights they're great, and they're really enjoyable, but one of the reasons why they're so enjoyable is because they're short. You know, they're not huge and overdrawn. And a lot of the movie's like that. A lot of the movie is very sort of condensed. None of the scenes feel particularly superfluous. And so I kind of feel like maybe that's why we didn't get a little bit more in terms of character development. And that's why the film feels a little bit more like a generic superhero movie. Because at the end of the day, he's a new character, and you don't want to outstay your welcome when you're a new character. But I think maybe 5 minutes extra might have served the movie well. In terms of characters, I think the secondary characters were a little bit forgettable. The Ancient One, I think Tilda Swinton did a really, really good job. I felt she was suited to the role. She played it well, she was interesting. And particularly when you look at other minor characters, so Baron Mordo came up in this movie, and he had a role. He was performed very well, but I just felt like the character was very predictable. Stay right until the end of the credits. They have a mid-credits scene and an end-of-credits scene, so just to watch out for that, guys. Just as it reminded me, you've got to stay and watch that. But I felt like he was sort of just a predictable secondary character. Same with Christine. She's played by Rachel McAdams, and I think she was passable. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with her character, but, you know, she's a little bit bland. She's still not my favourite Christine in the old fictional medical world. I think the only other character that really shone besides Stephen and the Ancient One was Mads Mikkelsen's Caecilius as the villain. Caecilius isn't going to go down as a name that's remembered alongside with like the Joker or somebody, but like he's a reasonably good villain. I think his reasonings behind why he's doing the villainous things that he's doing is actually really clever. There was a point where I was kind of like, oh well, I kind of get why he's doing this, and you almost sort of root for him a little bit. And I think, you know, he almost convinces Stephen at one point as well, because, you know, he's doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. Like, he doesn't know quite what's going to happen when his evil plan comes to fruition. I feel like he's got the wrong end of a stick. And actually, there's a joke at the end of the movie that sort of almost pokes fun at the evil plan, because the ending of the plan really hadn't been thought through very well. But I feel like the intentions were actually pretty decent, and Mads Mikkelsen like really works to make this character, you know, believable, and make this character maybe not likable because he's a villain, but, you know, you get him. And I felt that Mads' performance was very subtle and very interesting, very multidimensional. Yeah, I really like him as a villain. And, you know, Marvel has a problem with villains. Marvel has, you know, it's Marvel syndrome, that they just cannot seem to get the villains right. But I feel like, you know, the more multi-layered a villain is, the more of a reason behind their plan, the better it's going to be. Which is, you know, why I'm so worried about Thanos, because he's kind of a one-trick pony. Speaking of multi-dimensional, I feel like the movie didn't really have as much focus on the kind of Russo action that we've seen before. I'm going to define that term because it sounds a little weird. So when you watch a Russo brothers Marvel movie, you get sort of a sense of impact, right? Like when characters hit each other, like it's gonna hurt, and the action scenes are really intense. You get things like the airport scene, the scene on the bridge in Winter Soldier, the fight between Tony, Bucky and Cap at the end of Civil War. You get like really big action pieces where the focus is on how cool the fight is, along with sometimes like at the end of Civil War emotional turmoil and pain. But with Doctor Strange, I feel like the focus is taken off of how hard the characters can hit each other, and the focus is a lot more on the thoughtfulness of the movie, which sounds really dull, but it's not, I promise. So you're sort of expected to take what you know about magic and what you've been taught in the movie and then apply it to the fight scenes. So I feel like it's sort of a way of making a movie that we've not seen Marvel do before. It's a lot more thoughtful. There are more sort of science-y terms, you know, about time dimensionality and spatial time differences and whatever. So like there's a lot more to think about in this movie, and I think that really fits the tone of Doctor Strange really well. So I'm glad that they went with sort of you know, it's a dialing down of intensity. They keep your interest as an audience member through intrigue and mystery and intellectual interest, rather than, you know, how hard can the characters hit each other, both emotionally and physical, if you're watching Civil War. So I think in terms of where Doctor Strange fits in the Marvel Universe, I think as a peripheral Marvel movie, it's not going to go down as Guardians of the Galaxy. it's not going to go down as Deadpool. You know, this isn't a movie that, you know, we were sort of seeing on the outlines and then it's come and surprised us all as like the most amazing thing Marvel's done yet, and oh my god. You know, this is a movie that's going to go down with, you know, Ant-Man as a peripheral Marvel movie. It's a really good film, and it surprised me personally, you know, from seeing the trailer to seeing the movie. I think the movie is much better than the promo material that they've put out. But I don't think it's quite sort of Guardians level. But I'd definitely say go see the movie. For me, I would place it above Ant-Man, sort of on the list of favourite Marvel movies. I feel like you watch Ant-Man, you know, twice and the jokes aren't funny and the movie is fine, but you wouldn't watch it again. But with Doctor Strange, I feel like there are a lot more to watch. There's a lot more to watch in Doctor Strange in terms of the action is very well balanced with comedy, which is balanced with sort of the serious moments of the movie, emotional moments of the movie. I think it's a more well-balanced movie as a whole, so I feel like it's got more watchability to it. It's also got a lot of references to previous Marvel movies and upcoming Marvel movies, so I'm going to be watching it again sometime this week, hopefully to catch a few more of those references. If you find any of them that you think I might have missed, please leave them in the comments below. And also let me know what you think of Doctor Strange if and when you see it. And please subscribe because I'm going to be making more of these videos soon. Alright, thanks guys. Bye!